The Force is old and full of shadows.
The handover happens in silence. No ceremony. No witnesses beyond those required. 3 Coruscant Guard shock troopers in their distinctive red-marked armor stand at measured intervals along the antechamber wall, and between them, flanked so precisely she might have been cargo, stands Ahsoka Tano. She doesn't fight it. That's the thing Anakin will turn over in his mind for hours afterward. She doesn't fight it at all. The Jedi who administers the formal separation is a temple archivist Anakin doesn't recognize. A slight human man with careful hands and careful eyes who reads from a data pad in a flat administrative tone, as though he is cataloging a library return rather than cutting a Padawan loose from everything she has ever known. The braid comes away slowly. Ceremonial shears, not a blade. The deliberateness of it is what makes it wrong. The fact that someone designed this process, sat down and decided it should be done this way, with measured steps and formal language and the appropriate witnesses present. Ahsoka's chin stays level throughout. Her eyes are dry. She has already gone somewhere inside herself that the ceremony cannot reach. Anakin recognizes it because he has been there. That particular stillness that is not peace, that is the opposite of peace. That is what happens when a person decides that nothing in the room is worth the cost of reacting to it. He is watching from the corridor. He shouldn't be. No one told him to come, and no one told him to stay away, and he has spent the last hour standing in this exact spot, doing exactly nothing. The council chamber is worse. He takes the turbolift up without having decided to. His feet carry him while his mind is still in the antechamber, still watching shears close on a braid, still watching Ahsoka's face do that terrible neutral thing. By the time he registers where he is, the chamber doors are open, and 12 seats form their familiar circle around him, and every face in that circle is wearing the same expression. Careful, composed, resolved. Anakin, Obi-Wan's voice, from his right. This is not the appropriate. I want to understand the reasoning. He says it to the room, not to any single face. His voice is level. He is proud of that. Walk me through it. Help me understand how we arrive here. Mace Windu holds his gaze without difficulty. The Senate has requested, the Senate has requested. Anakin lets the words sit for a moment. A Padawan who has served this order for 3 years, who has fought at Christophsis and Ryloth and the Citadel, who has buried men she led, is handed to the Senate's judicial process, because the Senate has requested it. Is that the full reasoning? Because I want to make sure I have it right. The evidence is circumstantial, and Ahsoka has told us it was planted. His voice doesn't rise. That is the thing he has decided. Coming up in the turbolift, he will not raise his voice in this room today. He will not give them the satisfaction of dismissing him as emotional. 3 years ago, I stood in front of you and told you she was ready. You disagreed. We had that argument. I respect that that argument happened. This is different. He moves forward 1 step. Not aggressive, just present. This is us handing our own to people who want a conviction, not a verdict. And I want to understand how we justify that. Mace Windu does not look away. He doesn't look cruel. That is, perhaps, the most infuriating thing about him. He looks like a man who has already done the calculus and arrived at a place he doesn't enjoy, but accepts. The Council's hands are bound by the Senate's need for order. If we are seen to obstruct, we are seen to protect our own. We are seen to be above the law. Windu's voice carries no heat, just weight, which is precisely what Ahsoka has been accused of believing. We cannot make that argument for her. Anakin, not now. Not publicly. The silence that follows is the specific kind that means everyone in the room agrees with him, or at least no one is willing to be the voice that doesn't. Anakin looks at each face in turn. Ki-Adi-Mundi, composed. Plo Koon, watching him with something that might be sorrow, or might be apology, or might be both. Kit Fisto, professionally neutral. He looks at Obi-Wan last. Obi-Wan's mouth opens. Something moves across his face, a decision forming, reaching for shape, looking for words. His mouth closes. He looks away first. Anakin nods once. He files that away. He turns back to Windu. I've buried 112 men in 3 years, he says. I know their names. I know which ones had families waiting. I know which ones didn't. He lets that number stand in the room for a moment. I have never, not once, left one of them to face something alone, because it was politically inconvenient not to. That's the standard I've held. I thought it was the Order's standard. A pause. I'm asking you to tell me whether it is. No one speaks. Right, Anakin says. He walks out. The corridor outside the council chamber is long and quiet at this hour. The light comes through the tall windows in long amber angles. Coruscant's sun doing what it always does at this time of day, indifferent to everything below it. A temple guard stands at the far end, motionless, somewhere below. In a transport Anakin can no longer intercept, Ahsoka is being moved. He stops walking when the doors close behind him. He stands in the middle of the corridor for what might be a long time. His mind is doing what it does in the field when conditions change mid-operation, not panicking, not shutting down, but running through the new shape of things, the altered terrain, what routes remain and which ones have just closed. He looks down at his lightsaber. The hilt sits in his hand without him having consciously drawn it. His thumb rests against the ignition, not pressing, just resting. He stares at it for a long moment. All of it passes through him in sequence. 3 years of war. The men at the other end of that number he said in the chamber. Ahsoka's face in the antechamber, her chin level, her eyes dry, already gone somewhere inside herself. The Order's hands are bound. He turns the hilt once in his grip. Slowly, deliberately, his hands are not bound. He clips the saber back to his belt. Something has settled in him. Not rage, not grief, but the particular cold clarity that precedes every command decision he has ever made on a battlefield where the official options have run out and what remains is only what he is willing to do. He doesn't go back through the council's doors. There's nothing behind them worth his time. He walks toward the turbolift. He already knows where he is going. He already knows who he needs to talk to. Rex will be at the barracks at this hour, running drills or maintaining equipment or doing the 100 small things that captains do when they're keeping men ready for a war that never actually stops. He'll listen without interrupting. He'll ask the right question at the end. Anakin presses the call button. They can have their process. He's getting his Padawan back. The barracks smell like gun oil and plastoid polish. It is a smell Anakin has never found unpleasant. There is something honest about it. The smell of men who maintain their equipment because their lives depend on it, who do the unglamorous work between battles because that is what keeps the battles survivable. The 501st Barracks on Coruscant occupy a mid-level block of the Gar complex 3 kilometers from the temple, and at this hour the main bay is lit by the lower maintenance strips rather than the full overheads, casting everything in a steady amber that makes the blue-painted armor stacked along the walls look almost warm. Rex is at the central table. He has a DC-15 sidearm field stripped in front of him, and he is cleaning it with the methodical focus of a man who thinks better with his hands occupied. He doesn't look up when Anakin enters. He doesn't need to. Heard the turbolift, Rex says. He sets down the cleaning cloth. Now he looks up. He reads Anakin's face in about 2 seconds. The way men do when they have spent 3 years learning to assess each other under fire. Sit down, sir. Anakin sits. He puts both hands flat on the table, looks at them for a moment, then looks at Rex. They handed her over, he says. Rex is quiet. He picks up the cleaning cloth again, sets it down again. A decision moving through him that his hands don't know what to do with. When? An hour ago, maybe less. Anakin exhales slowly. Coruscant Guard transport. She's in the retention block now, waiting for a trial that's already decided. Rex's jaw tightens. It is a small movement, barely visible, but Anakin knows his captain's face as well as he knows his own, and that small tightening is Rex's version of a man who has just heard something that changes the shape of everything in front of him. He doesn't speak immediately. He reassembles the sidearm with practiced efficiency, the pieces clicking back into place with quiet finality, and sets it on the table between them. "What are you thinking?" Rex asks. "I'm thinking the Order made a decision," Anakin says, "and I'm going to make a different one." The words settle between them like a stone dropped in still water. Rex looks at him steadily. He is not a man who asks a question he doesn't already know the shape of the answer to. He asked it anyway, because some things need to be said plainly before they become actions. You're talking about going in, Rex says. Yes, into a Coruscant Guard facility. Yes, Rex nods slowly. Not agreement yet. Consideration. Fox runs that block. Commander Fox. He's thorough, his rotations are tight, and his men are, he pauses. His men are us, sir. Same template. Same training. I know. This doesn't go clean. Rex folds his hands on the table, and his eyes don't move from Anakin's face. We go in, we're going against brothers. I need you to know that I know that before I say anything else. I know that too. Another silence. Longer this time. Somewhere in the barracks, two troopers are having a low conversation in the back bunk section, their voices indistinct, occasional laughter breaking through. Normal sounds. The sound of men who don't yet know that their captain is sitting at this table right now deciding something that will change all of them. Rex stands. He moves to the rack on the wall where his own armor hangs, and he runs one hand along the shoulder pauldron, the blue paint. The orange detail marks that Ahsoka's design influenced 3 campaigns ago. His thumb traces the edge of it. Stun only, he says. His back is still to Anakin. If we do this, every rifle switches to stun before we breach. Anyone fires a live round, they answer to me personally. I want that understood at every level before we move. Anakin looks at the back of his captain's head. Something tightens in his chest that is not grief and not quite gratitude, but lives in the same place as both. You haven't heard my plan yet. I know enough. Rex turns around. His expression is settled now, the consideration finished, something harder and quieter in its place. She wore our colors. She led our men. She sat in the dirt with us at the Citadel after. He stops. Starts again. She is ours. Whatever the Council decided, that part doesn't change. He moves back to the table. Tell me the layout. By the time the briefing begins, there are 32 of them. Anakin didn't call a formation. Rex didn't issue an order. Word moved through the barracks the way it always does in a unit that has been together long enough. Not a chain of command, just a current, invisible, and immediate. One trooper told another, who told 3 more, and by the time Anakin has his schematics pulled up on the portable holoprojector Jesse dragged in from the equipment locker, the main bay is full of blue-painted armor and attentive faces. He looks at them. He takes a moment to do it properly, to actually see them, not as bodies filling space, but as men. Kicks, arms crossed, watching with the focused calm of someone who has already started running field medicine scenarios in his head. Jesse, jaw set. The particular hard look he gets when he is angry about something and has decided to be useful about it instead. Dogma in the back, standing very still, the kind of stillness that belongs to a man who has learned the hard way that he was wrong once about where loyalty ends. Fives and Tup standing shoulder to shoulder, like 2 halves of the same decision that hasn't been spoken aloud yet. What I'm about to ask is not an order, Anakin says. The room is already quiet. It gets quieter. I'm not invoking rank. I'm not invoking the chain of command. I'm asking. He lets that sit for a second. Ahsoka Tano has been remanded to the retention block pending trial. The Council has complied with the Senate's request. I am not complying. He keeps his voice even. The words are enough on their own. They don't need his anger behind them. What I need are volunteers. Men who understand that this puts them outside military law, and who choose it anyway. No one in this room is obligated. No one who walks out of here right now answers for it later. No one moves. He waits, gives it a full 10 seconds. The kind of silence that has weight. Not a single trooper shifts toward the door. Jesse speaks first, from the middle of the group. We going in loud or quiet, General? A murmur that is almost laughter, almost not. Anakin feels something move through him that he doesn't have a word for, not relief, because some part of him knew this was how it would go, but something fuller than relief, something that lives below the chest. Quiet, he says. And clean. Rex will walk you through the engagement rules. Stun only. I want everyone walking out of there the same way they walked in. including Fox's men. He glances at Rex, who takes a single step forward to address the room. "Listen up," Rex says. "This is how we do this without leaving anyone on the floor." The briefing runs 40 minutes. By the end of it, the holoprojector has cycled through the retention block's triple ray shield layout, the guard's patrol rotation, the central security hub's position relative to sub-level 3, and the 90-second breach window that dropping the primary control junction opens before backup generators cycle. Anakin has been in tighter corridors against worse odds. He files the layout in the tactical part of his mind where things become geometry rather than danger. When the briefing closes, Rex dismisses the men to prep. Armor, weapons checks, stun confirmation. The room fills with the familiar sounds of the 501st getting ready, the deliberate, efficient sounds of men who have done this enough times that the ritual of it is its own kind of calm. Anakin stays at the table as the room moves around him. Fives passes close on the way to the equipment rack. He slows just slightly, not stopping, not making a moment of it. "She'd do it for us," he says, almost quiet enough to be only for himself. He keeps walking. Anakin watches the room. These men with their blue-painted armor and their orange detailing, and their names he knows. Their histories he carries, their faces he would recognize in any light or any condition after 3 years of war. They are checking each other's fastenings and swapping quiet words and confirming stun settings with the focused calm of men who have already made their decision and are simply executing it now. He thinks about Ahsoka in that antechamber. Chin level. Eyes dry. He stands up. There is work to do. Coruscant never goes dark. That is the first thing every pilot learns approaching the planet. There is no night side, no shadow hemisphere, no quadrant where the lights drop below a certain threshold. 47 trillion lives burning energy around the clock see to that. From above, the planet looks like something caught mid-ignition. A permanent slow fire contained in durasteel and transparasteel, and 1,000,000 kilometers of power conduit running beneath the surface like veins. From ground level, at 0300 hours in the Guard District's outer service corridor, it looks like this: amber sodium lighting on 12-meter intervals. A low ceiling of cloud reflecting the city's glow back down in a wash of orange. And the Republic Military Judiciary Complex rising 4 blocks ahead like a fist pressed against the sky. Anakin crouches at the corridor's edge and looks at it. 31 men breathe quietly behind him. Rex materializes at his shoulder without sound. 3 years of operating together have made this automatic. Rex always takes the right, always matches pace, always arrives without announcement. He has the schematics on a handheld display, its screen dimmed to the lowest readable setting, and he orients it so Anakin can see without turning his head. "Guard rotation past the east checkpoint 4 minutes ago," Rex says. His voice is a murmur below the city's ambient hum. "Next pass in 11. We have the window." Anakin nods. He studies the building's exterior, the 3 shield substation housings visible as low. Reinforced structures spaced around the perimeter, the main entrance sealed with the standard Coruscant Guard security overlay. The single ventilation service access on the building's north face that Tup spent 3 hours the previous day pulling maintenance records to identify. "Tup," he says quietly. Tup moves up from the second rank. He is carrying a compact ion pulse device the size of a thermal detonator, cradled with the careful attention of a man who understands exactly what it does and does not want to learn what happens if it misfires. "Ready, sir. The primary control junction is the substation on the northwest corner," Anakin says. "You take it down, we get 90 seconds before backup generators cycle. Not 91. Not 92. I know, sir, I know you know. I'm saying it because I want the number in your head when you're moving." Anakin looks at him directly. "You good?" Tup meets his eyes, nods once, clean and certain. "I'm good." Anakin looks at Rex. Rex looks back. The conversation they have in that half-second is the kind that only works between people who have been making decisions together long enough that words are mostly unnecessary. A confirmation. A readiness check. An acknowledgement that past this point the plan is in motion and neither of them will be second-guessing it. "Move out," Anakin says. They go in 4 elements. Tup and a 2-man team peel left toward the northwest substation, moving low and fast along the service corridor's shadow line. Jesse leads a 6-trooper element toward the east checkpoint to hold the guards' attention on a false perimeter contact. A carefully timed distraction. Nothing more. No engagement, unless forced. Kix and a medical element stage 2 blocks back in the service corridor, ready to move on Rex's signal, because Rex insisted on a field medic contingency, and Anakin agreed without argument. The remaining 20 move with Anakin toward the north face. The ventilation service access is a 2-meter panel set flush with the building's exterior. Sealed with a standard magnetic lock that Anakin removes from its housing with a single, precise application of telekinesis, not a dramatic pull, just a careful push of force energy into the mechanism's interior, finding the release points the way a key finds a lock, and turning. The panel swings inward. No alarm. The maintenance crew that services this access is scheduled for 0600, 3 hours away, and the lock is not wired to the security hub because someone in the building's original design decided maintenance access didn't need to be. Anakin files that detail in the part of his mind that collects institutional failures. The interior smells like recycled air and machine lubricant. They move through the ventilation maintenance corridor in single file. Rex directly behind Anakin, the column stretching back into the dark. The ceiling is low. Most of the troopers in full armor have to keep their heads slightly ducked, their shoulder pauldrons brushing the conduit housings on either side. No one complains. They navigate by the faint blue glow of helmet-mounted low-light systems, moving with the trained quiet of men who have cleared enough hostile corridors that silence is no longer something they have to concentrate on. It is simply the mode they switch into. Anakin doesn't use low light. He uses the Force. He extends his awareness ahead through the conduit network, reading the building the way he reads a battlefield, not in visual terms, but in presence, in weight, in the particular texture that living beings leave in the Force around them. 2 troopers at the corridor junction 40 meters ahead, stationary, a third moving on the level below, patrol pattern, heading east. The central security hub 1 level up and 30 meters north, 3 presences clustered around what reads as a control station. He holds up a closed fist. The column stops. He holds up 2 fingers, points forward, spreads his hand flat weight. Rex relays it back down the line with hand signals, soundless and immediate. 30 seconds. The moving presence below continues east and doesn't return. Anakin lowers his hand. They move. The junction is a 4-way intersection where maintenance corridors cross above the building's checkpoint level. Anakin flattens against the wall and looks around the corner at the 2 guard troopers, red pauldrons, shock trooper configuration, positioned at a security door that leads to the elevator bank serving the sublevels. They are standing at parade rest, rifles held across their bodies, visors forward. Alert. But alert in the way that men are alert when nothing has gone wrong in a long time, and they have started to believe nothing will. Their rotation has been predictable for 3 days, because their rotation has been predictable for 3 years. They have never had to defend against an internal breach. The Coruscant Guard is the best protective force on the planet, trained for external threats. Political violence, high-value escort, not for the possibility that 31 of their own brothers might come through the wall behind them. Anakin looks at Rex. Rex already has 2 troopers positioned. 1 breath. 2. The ion pulse hits the corridor's lighting strip and drops it to emergency backup, a dim red that shifts everything to shadow. Both guard troopers turn toward the light failure, weapons coming up on instinct, and in the 3 seconds it takes them to register that there is no visible threat in front of them, Rex's men come around the corner low and fast. The takedowns are clean, pressure to the back of the knees, arm control, a precisely applied hold that drops both troopers to the ground before they can call it in. Their rifles clatter softly on the durasteel. Neither of them is hurt. Rex checks personally, 2 fingers to each trooper's pulse point, and nods. They move through the security door. Tup's ion pulse hits the primary control junction at exactly the moment Anakin reaches the elevator bank. The building's shield array dies with a sound like a held breath releasing. A low, subsonic pressure drop that Anakin feels more than hears, somewhere in his back teeth. The emergency lighting kicks on throughout the facility, red washing every corridor. Somewhere above them, an alarm begins to cycle. 90 seconds. Rex is already moving. Sub-level 3, south block, he says into the comms, and the element behind them breaks into a controlled run. They take the stairs. Elevators are choke points. Elevators have cameras. Elevators close around you while you wait. The stairs are a single flight down, a fire door at the bottom, and Anakin goes through it at speed with the Force already extending ahead of him, reading the detention level, counting presences, mapping what is between him and the specific cell in the south block's furthest reach, where a single presence sits very still and very alone. He knows that stillness. He has been reading it since the antechamber. She is still inside herself, still unreachable, still doing that thing she does when she has decided nothing in the room is worth reacting to. The corridor ahead has 4 guard troopers and a locked security station. 63 seconds. Rex, Anakin says. On it, Rex says. They move. The detention level smells like cold metal and recycled silence. Sub-level 3 runs the full footprint of the building above it, a long rectangular corridor bisected by a central security station and flanked on both sides by individual cell blocks. Dura-steel doors set at 4-meter intervals, each one sealed with binary magnetic locks that require both a command code and a physical override key carried only by the duty officer. The emergency lighting paints everything in flat red. The alarm cycling above has dropped to a lower frequency down here, more felt than heard, a pulse in the floor that registers in the soles of Anakin's boots with every step. 4 guard troopers are between him and the south block. They see the 501st at the same moment the 501st sees them. The guard sergeant, a trooper with a command stripe on his pauldron and the particular posture of a man who has run this level for long enough to know its geometry precisely, brings his rifle up in a single practiced motion and opens his mouth to call it in. Rex hits him with a stun bolt from 15 meters before the call leaves his throat. The sergeant drops. His 3 troopers have their weapons up in the next half second. Stun settings. Anakin can tell by the charge pitch, a slightly higher whine than live fire, and the corridor fills with the flat blue light of stun bolts crossing both directions at once. 2 501st troopers go down on Anakin's left. A guard trooper staggers back against the wall, clipped on the shoulder, and slides down it slowly. Anakin walks through the exchange. He doesn't raise his weapon. He extends his left hand and pushes, a broad telekinetic sweep that takes the remaining guard rifles and bends their barrels against the corridor wall with a sound like stressed metal finding its limit. Not violent. Precise. The weapons are useless now, and the men holding them are unharmed. And the whole thing takes approximately 1.5 seconds. The remaining 2 guard troopers freeze. Anakin looks at them. He is aware of how he appears in this moment, a Jedi general in a red-lit detention corridor with 30 armed men behind him, and the kind of expression that communicates, without requiring words, that resistance has exhausted its practical options. Stand down, he says. We're not here for you. One of them does immediately, a young trooper, CC designation on his pauldron, who reads the geometry of the situation the way a good soldier always does, and arrives at the correct conclusion. He sets his ruined rifle on the floor and steps back from it. The other takes a breath, holds it, looks at the orange detailing on the 501st armor around him, at the markings that Ahsoka's own design influenced, the particular pattern that has become synonymous with the unit she helped shape. Something moves behind his visor that Anakin can't see, but can read in the set of his shoulders, a weight landing and shifting. He sets his rifle down. Rex is already moving toward the security station. 41 seconds. The duty officer's station is a half-circle console set into the corridor's center point, and the duty officer himself is a guard lieutenant who made the tactically sound decision to trigger the silent alarm the moment the lights changed, and is now sitting very still with his hands visible on the console, surface and his eyes tracking Rex's approach with the focused attention of a man who is being intelligent about his circumstances. Override code and the key, Rex says. He stops 2 meters from the console. His voice is not unkind. South block. Last cell. Now, Lieutenant. The lieutenant looks at him for a moment. Not calculating escape, calculating something more complicated, the kind of assessment that happens when a man in uniform is asked to act against his orders by someone wearing the same uniform, and has to decide in under 3 seconds what he actually believes about the situation. She didn't do it, Rex says. It is not an argument. It is a statement of fact delivered by a man who has no reason to lie about it, and it lands differently than an order would. You know that. Everyone in this building knows that. The lieutenant's jaw works once. He reaches under the console and produces the physical key, a flat durasteel rod with a command chip embedded at one end, and reads the override code from his terminal in a flat, careful voice. Rex takes the key. Thank you, he says. He means it. 28 seconds. The south block door opens on Rex's override, and they move through it at a run now, protocol abandoned in favor of arithmetic. The cells on either side are dark. This block holds one occupant, and at the corridor's end, the last door on the left. Anakin reaches through the Force before he reaches with his hands. He knows her presence the way he knows the weight of his own lightsaber. Even compressed down to this, even reduced to this terrible stillness she has wrapped around herself, like armor, it is unmistakably hers. He puts the key in the lock. The door opens. Ahsoka is sitting on the cell's single bench with her back against the wall, and her knees drawn up and her arms resting on them, loose-handed. The posture of someone who has been sitting exactly like this for long enough that it has stopped being a choice and become simply the shape of the time passing. The cell is 4 meters by 3. A bench. A sanitary unit. A drain in the floor. The emergency lighting through the door slot has been giving her red for the last 90 seconds, and she hasn't moved toward it. She looks up when the door opens. She sees Anakin first. Her face does something complicated. Not relief exactly, not yet. Something that happens just before relief. In the moment when a person who has been holding themselves very carefully together for a very long time suddenly has a reason not to, and doesn't know what to do with that yet. Then she sees Rex behind him. Then the corridor beyond, the blue painted armor, the orange markings moving in the red light. Her chin drops. Just slightly. Just enough. "Sky Guy," she says. Her voice is steady. Of course it is. "We're leaving," Anakin says. She stands. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't say, "I knew you'd come," or "You shouldn't have done this," or any of the things that would require him to argue with her right now. She reads the situation the way he trained her to read every situation, quickly, accurately, with immediate priority given to what is actionable. What is actionable right now is the door. She walks through it. Rex hands her a sidearm in the corridor without breaking stride, DC-17, set to stun, grip first. She takes it, checks the setting by touch, clips it to the waistband of the detention issue clothes she is still wearing. No comment. No ceremony. The exchange takes 3 seconds. They move toward the stairs at speed. Behind them, the guard troopers Anakin passed in the main corridor are beginning to recover. The stunned ones. The ones Rex dropped. The ones who had the sense to stand down. No one follows. Whether that is because they can't yet, or because they are choosing not to, is a question Anakin doesn't have the time to investigate. Fives has the stairwell door. Jesse is on the comms. Tup's window closes in 8 seconds, Jesse says, tight and fast. "We need to be through the north access before backup generators cycle, or we are having a very different conversation on the ground level." "Move," Anakin says. They take the stairs in a controlled surge. Not a rout, not a panic. The organized speed of men who have rehearsed their exit route well enough that they can run it without thinking. Ahsoka stays in the center of the formation without being told to, tucked between Rex and Kix, her legs finding the pace in seconds. They hit the maintenance corridor at a run. The backup generators cycle at exactly the moment the last trooper clears the ventilation access panel. Anakin feels the shield array reinitialize like a pressure change, the building sealing itself back up behind them. The panel swings shut. The lock resets. From the outside, the judiciary complex looks exactly as it did 20 minutes ago. Anakin crouches at the corridor's edge and does a count. 31 men. 1 Padawan. 2 troopers down with stun exposure. Kix is already moving toward them with the focused attention of someone who considers an untreated stun headache a personal failure. No other injuries. No guard trooper left in a condition worse than they were in when the night started. He exhales slowly. Rex appears at his right shoulder, exactly where he always is. Extraction point is 4 blocks north, Rex says. Transport staged. We have maybe 6 minutes before Fox puts a description on the nets. Anakin nods. He looks at Ahsoka. She is standing 2 meters away, arms loose at her sides, looking up at the orange reflecting cloud ceiling of Coruscant's permanent false dawn. Her face is doing the thing it does when she is processing something too large for immediate reaction, still, almost abstract, present but turned inward. Then she looks at him, and the thing that moves across her face then is not complicated at all. "Thank you," she says quietly. He doesn't answer. There is nothing to say that the last 4 blocks of blue-painted armor haven't already said better. 4 minutes, Rex says. They move. The transport is a mid-bulk freighter with a transponder registered to a shell company Rex has never heard of, and deliberately never asked about. It sits in Bay 7 Auric of a secondary landing platform 4 blocks north of the Judiciary Complex, squatting low on its landing struts like something that has absorbed too many parsecs to be in a hurry about anything. The running lights are on minimum. The boarding ramp is down. The pilot, a clone trooper named Hawk, who flies anything with an engine, and has the particular calm of someone who has been waiting in hostile territory long enough to make peace, with the possibility that the people he is waiting for might not show, is standing at the top of the ramp with his arms folded and his eyes on the approach corridor. He sees them coming and straightens. 32, he says, counting the column as it moves up the ramp. Plus the commander. A pause as Ahsoka passes him. Something shifts in his posture, not surprise exactly. More like a weight he has been carrying since the briefing redistributing itself into something manageable. "Good," he says, to no one in particular. The ramp closes behind them. The freighter's hold smells like hydraulic fluid and old ration packs and the particular staleness of a ship that has been sealed and waiting. Emergency lighting only. Whoever prepped this vessel understood that lit portholes in a docked bay at 0330 are a conversation nobody wants to have. The 501st fills the hold with the compressed efficiency of men who have traveled in worse conditions and know how to make themselves useful in a small space. Kix sets up a field station against the port wall immediately, because 2 troopers are still carrying stun exposure symptoms, and Kix treats a stun headache with the same focused urgency he treats a blaster wound. He doesn't ask permission. He simply begins. Ahsoka finds a section of the hold's starboard wall and puts her back against it. She slides down it until she is sitting on the deck with her knees up, the same posture from the cell, Anakin notices, but different in every way that matters. In the cell it was the posture of someone who had stopped waiting. Here it is the posture of someone who is still processing the fact that waiting is over. He sits down beside her, not close enough to crowd her, close enough to be there. Neither of them speaks for a moment. Above them, Hawk is running through pre-flight with the economy of a man who has been told that speed matters more than elegance tonight. The engines begin their low-cycling groan. "You went against the Council," Ahsoka says. Not an accusation. Just the fact of it, turned over carefully. "Yes, and the Senate." Technically, she looks at the deck between her boots. "Anakin, don't," he says. Not harshly. "Don't apologize. Don't tell me you didn't ask for this. Don't do the thing where you spend the next 10 minutes trying to absorb responsibility for a decision I made." He looks at the side of her face until she looks back at him. "I made the decision. It was mine. We're done with that part." She holds his gaze for a moment. Her eyes are tired, not just tonight tired, but the deeper kind, the kind that accumulates in layers when a person has been carrying something alone for too long. "Okay," she says. The engines climb in pitch. The freighter shudders once, the landing struts retracting, and then the floor pushes up against them as Hawk takes them off the platform with the brisk confidence of someone who finds lingering in atmosphere professionally embarrassing. They are 6 minutes out of atmosphere when Rex appears from the cockpit corridor with a handheld comm unit and a specific expression. "Fox is on the nets," he says. He hands the unit to Anakin. The Coruscant Guard frequency is a controlled burst of activity, channel discipline holding, because Fox runs a disciplined unit, but the underlying urgency audible in the clipped exchanges. Checkpoint confirmations. Planetary departure alerts going to all registered outbound traffic. A description, broadcast on the GAR emergency band, that covers armor color, unit markings, 1 Jedi, 1 fugitive Togruta female, and 1 unregistered mid-bulk freighter departing Bay 7 Auric. Secondary platform, secondary landing complex, 0341 hours. Anakin listens to it without expression. Then a second broadcast cuts through. Higher frequency, priority override. The kind that requires a command authorization to access. The voice is Commander Fox himself, and he sounds like a man who has just been handed a situation that is personally painful and professionally infuriating in equal measure. All units, this is Fox. Broadcast update. Shoot to kill authorization has been issued for General Skywalker and the fugitive Tano. Authorization comes from Admiral Tarkin's office, countersigned by the Judicial Department. All clone units are ordered to treat the 501st Legion as hostile combatants. Coruscant Guard compliance is mandatory. Fox out. The hold goes quiet. Not the quiet of men who are afraid. The quiet of men who have just heard something that requires a moment to fully arrive, to find all its edges, to be understood completely. Fives is the first voice. Shoot to kill, he says. Flat and even. That's Tarkin. That's Tarkin, Anakin confirms. So, we're wanted men. Jesse says it like he is confirming an order of rations, checking the facts of a situation before deciding how to arrange himself inside them. You've been wanted men before, Rex says. He is looking around the hold as he says it, at each face, reading the room the way he always does, assessing not morale in the abstract, but the specific current state of each man he is responsible for. What he sees, Anakin can read in the slight adjustment of his posture afterward. They are holding. All of them. This is different in degree, Rex continues, not in kind. We knew what we were signing on to. From somewhere in the middle of the hold, Dogma's voice, quiet and deliberate. I've been on the wrong side of an order before. I know what following the wrong one looks like. A pause. This isn't it. The laughter that follows is real. Short. Sharp. Released like pressure from a seal. Not the kind that dismisses what was just said, but the kind that metabolizes it into something survivable. Ahsoka is not laughing, but something around her eyes has changed. She is looking at the hold full of men who just heard they have been authorized for lethal force and responded the way they always do, by deciding what they actually believe and organizing themselves around it, and her face is doing the complicated thing again. That pre-relief thing, reaching toward something she has not let herself reach toward yet. Hawk's voice comes over the internal comm. We have a problem. Anakin is on his feet and moving toward the cockpit before Hawk finishes the sentence. The cockpit viewport shows open space, Coruscant's curvature visible below, the star field ahead, and between them and the nearest hyperspace corridor. 2 Coruscant Guard patrol gunships running an intercept vector. Fast movers. The kind of craft Fox reserves for hard stops. They were staged, Hawk says. His hands are already moving across the navigation console. Someone pre-positioned them. Tarkin. He says the name like a diagnosis. Jump coordinates are plotted, but the corridor is another 4 minutes out at current speed. They'll be in weapons range in 3, Anakin says. He does the arithmetic without thinking about it. Yes, sir, Anakin looks at the gunships. He looks at the hyperspace corridor marker on the navigation display. He looks at Hawk, who is watching him with the expectant calm of a pilot who has been in enough impossible situations to have stopped finding them surprising. How well can you fly this thing? Anakin asks. Hawk's hands settle on the maneuvering controls. Better than it deserves, he says. Prove it. What follows is 3 minutes and 40 seconds that no one in the hold will describe identically afterward, because individual experience of controlled chaos is always partial. From the outside. The freighter moves like something that has forgotten it is not a fighter, cutting across the patrol gunship's intercept arc at an angle that requires both gunship pilots to break formation to adjust, which costs them 8 seconds, which is the 8 seconds Hawk needed. The gunships fire twice each. All 4 bolts miss, because Hawk is already somewhere other than where they are aimed. The freighter's hull groaning with the effort of maneuvers it was not designed to perform. Inside the hold, 31 troopers and 1 Togruta are braced against whatever surface is nearest, the deck tilting and correcting and tilting again. The engine note climbing and dropping in a register that communicates, clearly and without ambiguity, that the ship is working very hard. Ahsoka, braced against the starboard wall, looks across the hold at Anakin, who is standing in the cockpit doorway with both hands on the frame and the particular expression of a man who is watching a pilot and choosing, deliberately, not to use the Force to help, because this is Hawk's problem to solve, and Anakin trusts him to solve it. She almost smiles. She doesn't. But almost. The hyperspace corridor opens ahead. Hawk hits it at full throttle. The stars streak. The hold goes still. In the sudden quiet, Rex exhales once, slow and controlled, and says, to no one in particular, "Good flying." From the cockpit, without turning around, I know. The negotiator drops out of hyperspace at the Sullust relay point 6 hours after the freighter disappears from Coruscant's tracking grid. It is not a coincidence. Obi-Wan Kenobi sits in the command chair of his cruiser's bridge with his hands folded in his lap and his eyes on the star field ahead, and the particular stillness of a man who has made a decision he is not entirely at peace with and has decided to make it anyway. The bridge crew moves around him with the disciplined quiet of men who have served under him long enough to read his silences accurately and understand that this particular silence means they should be very busy looking at their own consoles. Commander Cody stands at his right shoulder. Tracking confirms the freighter's last projected vector puts it through this relay. Cody says. He says it carefully, the way he says things when the information he is delivering has personal implications he is professionally required to keep out of his voice. If they maintained heading, they're 8 hours ahead of us. If they dropped out early, they didn't, Obi-Wan says. Cody absorbs that. Sir, Anakin doesn't run sideways. He runs forward, and he runs fast. Obi-Wan's eyes don't move from the viewport. He'll go somewhere he can think. Somewhere with cover and time and a sympathetic ear. He pauses. Plot a course for Salukami. The outer continent. Cody looks at him for a moment longer than strictly necessary. That's a considerable assumption, sir. It is. Obi-Wan agrees. He doesn't add anything. He has given the order. And the order is the order, and the rest of it lives in the part of him that he is not currently allowing to speak. The Council's emergency session runs 4 hours on Coruscant. Anakin would not recognize what happens in that chamber as the same body that dismissed him the day before. Not because the people have changed, but because the situation has. And institutions are always revealed more clearly by pressure than by ordinary function. Mace Windu chairs the session with the controlled precision of a man managing something that has gone further than he intended and is now required to respond to its actual dimensions, rather than the ones he planned for. Ki Adi Mundi is the first to name what everyone in the room already knows. The Senate is calling it a mutiny, he says. The word is already in the HoloNet feeds. Tarkin saw to that. Tarkin saw to a great many things last night, Plo Koon observes. The shoot-to-kill order is the problem, Mace says. Not the order itself, the authorization. Tarkin moved faster than he should have been able to. The countersignature from the Judicial Department was in place within 20 minutes of the breach. He looks around the table. That is not a reactive measure. That is a prepared one. The silence that follows has a different quality than the silence at the previous session. Then, it was the silence of men who had decided. Now it is the silence of men who are beginning to understand that the situation they were managing has a shape they did not see clearly. Obi-Wan is present for the session via holocom, a blue-rendered ghost standing in the chamber's center, his expression carrying the specific, careful neutrality of a man who is listening more than speaking. "You've found them," Mace says. "It is not a question." "Not yet," Obi-Wan says. "I have a direction." "The order stands," Mace says. "Find Anakin. Bring him back." Obi-Wan nods. His expression doesn't change. What does not get said in the chamber, because some things cannot be said in a chamber where everything is recorded, is what it means that Obi-Wan requested this assignment himself before any other master could be dispatched. What it means that he plotted his own course before council authorization formally arrived. What it means that a man who is hunting his former Padawan is doing so at a pace that is fast enough to constitute genuine pursuit, and calibrated in a way that will make it very difficult for anyone else to get there first. He finds them at Selukami. Specifically, he finds the freighter parked in a canyon system on the planet's outer continent, covered with a thermal dispersal canopy that would fool most sensors, and does not fool Obi-Wan Kenobi because he trained the man who chose the hiding spot, and knows exactly how Anakin thinks about concealment, which is to say, practically but not creatively. With an emphasis on speed of access and exit over depth of cover. He takes a single shuttle down. No Cody. No escort. The canyon is red rock and thin scrub, and the kind of quiet that belongs to places that have never had enough water to sustain argument. 2 501st troopers are on perimeter at the canyon entrance. They see the shuttle land, and they look at each other, and then they look at the shuttle, and one of them keys his comm. By the time Obi-Wan reaches the freighter's boarding ramp, Anakin is standing at the bottom of it. They look at each other across 12 meters of red canyon floor. "You came alone," Anakin says. "I came alone," Obi-Wan confirms. "That's either a good sign or a trap." "I've never trapped you," Obi-Wan says. "I've occasionally outmaneuvered you. It's a meaningful distinction." He walks forward until they are at a normal conversational distance and stops. He looks at Anakin's face carefully, not searching for guilt, not assessing for threat, just looking, the way he has always looked, with the attention of a man for whom this particular face has been the most important face in his life for 15 years. "You look tired," he says. "I'm fine. You always say that. It's always partially true." Anakin folds his arms. "What are your orders, Master?" Obi-Wan is quiet for a moment. Above them, the canyon walls catch the wind in a low register, a sound like something breathing slowly. "My orders," he says carefully, "are to find you and return you to Coruscant." And I have found you." He meets Anakin's eyes without looking away. The rest is a matter of interpretation. Anakin studies him. His arms don't unfold, but something in the set of his shoulders changes. A small shift, a recalibration. "You knew she didn't do it," he says. It comes out level, not accusatory. A statement that has been sitting in him since the council chamber, waiting for the right moment to become words. In the chamber. "You were going to say something." Obi-Wan doesn't deflect. "Yes, but you didn't." "No." A pause. "I didn't." He looks away briefly, at the canyon wall, at nothing specific, at the middle distance where things that are difficult to say sometimes become slightly easier if you're not looking directly at the person you need to say them to. "That is something I will have to carry." He looks back. "I am carrying it." The thing that moves across Anakin's face at that admission is complicated and honest, and not quite forgiveness, but not far from it. "She's inside," he says. "I know," Obi-Wan says. "I could feel her." Ahsoka is sitting at the freighter's small galley table when Obi-Wan comes up the ramp. Rex is across from her. They both look up, Rex with the measuring assessment he gives every new variable in a room. Ahsoka with an expression that takes a moment to settle. She has not seen Obi-Wan since before the antechamber. He is, in some measure, the council to her right now, the institution in human form, the thing that failed her, wearing a face she has always trusted. She lets him sit down. "I owe you an apology," Obi-Wan says. He folds his hands on the table. "Not on behalf of the council. Personally, I was in that chamber and I said nothing. And that is mine." Ahsoka looks at him for a long moment. "Why didn't you?" she asks. Not bitter, genuinely asking. Obi-Wan considers it with the honesty it deserves. "Because I believed the process would correct itself," he says. "Because I trusted the institution more than I trusted what I could see in front of me." He holds her gaze. "I was wrong. The process was not going to correct itself. And I knew that, and I stayed quiet anyway." He pauses. "I'm sorry, Ahsoka. The silence that follows is not hostile." Ahsoka looks down at the table. Something moves through her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of the space where forgiveness becomes possible. A door, not yet open, but unlocked. What happens now? Rex asks. He has been watching Obi-Wan throughout with the patient attention of a man who reserves judgment until the evidence is complete. Obi-Wan looks at Rex, then at Ahsoka, then toward the cockpit corridor where Anakin's presence in the Force is a familiar weight, warm and restless. Now, he says. I go back to Coruscant. He stands. And I tell the Council I found you. A pause, and that you were already gone when I arrived. Rex's eyes don't move. You're giving us time. I'm interpreting my orders. Obi-Wan straightens his robe. I said I would find Anakin. I found him. What I did not say was what condition I found him in, or what direction he was moving, or what the timeline of my report would look like. He moves toward the ramp. You have 48 hours before anyone more motivated than me comes looking. He pauses at the top of the ramp and looks back once, at Ahsoka specifically. The truth has a way of finding its own moment, he says. Don't run so far you're not there when it does. He walks back down into the canyon. The red rock swallows the sound of his footsteps. Anakin watches him go from the cargo bay doorway, arms folded, saying nothing. 48 hours. He turns back into the ship. There is work to do. The safe house is a decommissioned moisture farm on Salukami's night continent. 3 rooms, a basement level that runs cooler than the surface by 15 degrees, and a communications array that Jesse spent 4 hours rewiring from its original agricultural telemetry function into something that can pull encrypted GAR frequencies without announcing itself to anyone listening. The walls are packed earth and insulation board, and they hold the heat of the day for hours after dark, making the interior smell like warm dust and old circuitry, and the particular staleness of a place that has been closed for a long time and is only now being asked to be useful again. Anakin has been awake for 31 hours. He stands at the room's central table with a portable holoprojector casting blue light across his face and a cold cup of caf at his left elbow that he has not touched in 2 hours. The projection shows everything they have: the Coruscant bombing site, the forensic report that Rex pulled from the GAR intelligence net before they left, the transport manifest for the nanodroids traced to a shell procurement account, and a web of connections between them that is almost a shape, almost a coherent picture, with one piece missing from the center that makes the rest of it difficult to resolve. Rex is on his right. Ahsoka is across the table, leaning on both forearms, studying the projection with the focused attention of someone who has been doing this kind of analysis since before she could vote. The nanodroids, she says. Walk me through the procurement chain again. Shell account, Anakin says. Registered through a Confederacy front on Raxus, but the original purchase order traces to a Coruscant supplier. Military grade. The kind of thing that doesn't move without someone inside the GAR supply chain facilitating it. Which means the framing wasn't improvised, Ahsoka says. No, it was built, weeks in advance, at minimum. Anakin's jaw tightens. Whoever did this knew the bombing was coming and positioned you to take the responsibility for it before it happened. Ahsoka is quiet for a moment. The weight of that sits in the room, not the information itself, which she has suspected, but hearing it stated plainly, the full dimensions of it laid out in blue light on a table, in a warm dark room on a planet no one is looking for them on. Someone who knew me, she says. Her voice is even. Someone who knew enough about how I operate, where I go. Who would believe it? Someone close to the temple, Anakin says. He looks at the projection, the missing piece at the center of it. The comm unit on the table activates at 0200 hours with an encrypted burst signal that Jesse's rewired array almost misses, a compression protocol that does not appear in standard GAR handbooks, that requires a specific decryption key to resolve into anything other than noise, and that Anakin recognizes the origin signature of before the decryption finishes. He stares at the resolved signal for a long moment. Ventress, he says. Rex's hand moves toward his sidearm by reflex. Anakin shakes his head once. The message is short. Text only, no visual. I know what you're looking for. You're looking in the right direction, but the wrong place. Meet me. Come light. Come alone. Or don't come. Coordinates follow. A canyon system. 2 hours east. An hour before dawn. Rex reads it over his shoulder. Could be a trap, he says. It could be, Anakin agrees. He is already calculating, not whether to go. That question resolved itself the moment he read the message. But how to go in a way that is as intelligent as possible about the risk. Ventress doesn't trap people she doesn't have a contract for. Right now nobody's paying her for me specifically. He looks at Rex. And if she had something to sell to Tarkin, she'd have sold it already. She's not known for her cooperative instincts, Rex says. No, but she's known for hating the Separatists almost as much as she hates the Jedi. Anakin reaches for his robe. And right now we're both looking for the same thing. The canyon 2 hours east is narrower than the one hiding their ship. A slot canyon. Red walls close enough to touch on both sides. The sky above a thin strip of pre-dawn deep blue. Anakin walks in alone. He reaches out with the Force as he walks, reading the geometry of the space, the walls, the rock formations. The one presence waiting at the canyon's first bend, making no particular effort at concealment. Asajj Ventress is sitting on a rock with her arms resting on her knees and the particular relaxed alertness of a predator who has already decided this is not a hunt. Her pale head turns as he rounds the bend. Her expression does what it usually does in his presence. Cycles through contempt and assessment and something more neutral in approximately 2 seconds, landing on the neutral thing. You look terrible, she says. Everyone keeps saying that, Anakin says. Maybe listen. She stands, not threatening, the movement of someone who thinks better on her feet. Sit or stand. I don't care. But listen, because I'm only saying this once, and I'm saying it because it's useful to me, not because I've developed any feelings about your Togruta. Understood. The lightsabers used in the attack on the temple, Ventress says. They were mine. Stolen. She says it with the particular precision of someone who has rehearsed this sentence, who knew that the sentence would require delivery without ambiguity, and has stripped it accordingly. I tracked the theft to Coruscant. I tracked it further than that, which is why I'm here, and why I know what you're going to find when you pull on the thread you're currently pulling. Anakin looks at her. Who took them? A Jedi, Ventress says. She watches his face absorb that, watches the stillness that comes over him, the particular quality of attention that is Anakin Skywalker understanding something he did not want to understand. Young, female, someone with access to the temple's secure archive level and the operational knowledge to stage a bombing and frame a specific individual. A pause. Someone who knows your Padawan well enough to know exactly which evidence would be most convincing. The canyon is very quiet. Barriss Offie, Anakin says. Ventress doesn't confirm it. She doesn't need to. The fact that she doesn't deny it is the confirmation. She force-choked a witness, Ventress says. Left the signature. If your forensics people know what they're looking for and where, they'll find it. She reaches into her coat and produces a data chip, small, matte black, the kind used for encrypted single transfer files. She holds it out. The theft records. My ship's security log from the night the sabers went missing. Chain of evidence that puts them in the temple before the bombing. Anakin takes the chip. Why? He asks. Not why give it to him. He understands the calculus of that. Why did she do it? Ventress is quiet for a moment. Something moves across her face that is more honest than most of what her face does. She told me, she says, before she understood who she was talking to. She believes the Jedi Order has become something wrong, that the war has made it complicit in things it should be fighting against. Another pause. She's not entirely incorrect. She's catastrophically wrong about the method. The pre-dawn light is beginning to differentiate the canyon walls from the sky above them, the first visual distinction between dark and darker that precedes actual light. Anakin looks at the data chip in his hand. She framed a 16-year-old girl, he says. A girl she called a friend. Yes, Ventress says. No elaboration. The flatness of it is its own commentary. He is back at the safe house before full dawn. Ahsoka is awake. He is not sure she has slept. She is at the table where he left her, the holoprojection still running, and she looks up when he comes in and reads his face in the same 2 seconds Rex always uses and arrives at the same place. You know, she says. I know. He sets the data chip on the table in front of her. Barriss Offee. The name lands in the room. He watches it land, watches Ahsoka's face go through something that is not the same as surprise, is closer to the final confirmation of a thing she has been refusing to let herself consider. Her jaw works once. Her hands, flat on the table, don't move. She was my friend, Ahsoka says. I know. The silence goes on long enough to be real. Not a pause, an actual silence. The kind that a person needs to absorb something that has mass. Then Ahsoka straightens. She picks up the data chip. She turns it once in her fingers, studying it with the focused attention she gives everything she has decided to act on. How do we use this? She asks. Anakin looks at her, at the steadiness of her, at the way she has processed something genuinely devastating, and arrived. Already. At the forward-facing question. This is who she is. This is who she has always been, underneath everything that has been done to her in the last week. We don't hide with it, he says. We walk it through the front door. Ahsoka looks up from the chip. The temple, he says. Daylight. All of us. No stealth, no cover, no apology. He holds her gaze. We prove it in front of everyone, and we do it where no one can look away. Rex, from the doorway where he has been listening, that's either the smartest thing I've ever heard or the most Skywalker thing I've ever heard. Both, Anakin says. Rex nods slowly. Both works. They land on Coruscant at mid-morning. No stealth approach. No secondary platform. No shell company transponder. No thermal dispersal canopy pulled over the hull in a canyon 2 hours from anywhere. Hawk brings the freighter in on a standard commercial approach vector. Files a legitimate landing request with Coruscant traffic control under a registry that will take someone approximately 4 hours to trace back to nothing, and sets them down on a public platform 3 blocks from the temple's main approach with the unhurried competence of a pilot who has decided that the best camouflage for a ship that is not supposed to be here is to behave exactly like a ship that is supposed to be here. The ramp comes down. Anakin walks out first. He does not wear a hood. He does not alter his pace or angle his face away from the skylane traffic moving overhead, or do any of the things that a man who is currently the subject of a GAR-wide alert might reasonably do in a public space. He walks in his Jedi robes with his lightsaber on his belt and his face forward, and behind him come 31 troopers in blue-painted armor with orange detailing that catches the mid-morning light like a declaration. And behind them comes Ahsoka Tano in civilian clothes with her montrals held high, and the data chip in her inner pocket, and an expression that has not contained a single gram of apology since she stepped off the ship. Rex falls into position at Anakin's right. 3 blocks is not a long walk. It takes 11 minutes, at a pace that is neither rushing nor dawdling, the pace of people who have somewhere to be, and have decided they will get there on their own terms. The Coruscant street life does what it always does around a column of armed men. Parts, watches, recalibrates. Pedestrians step back. A speeder slows. A street vendor on the corner near the temple's outer approach sees what is coming and simply stops what he is doing and watches, the way people watch things that are unusual enough to require full attention. 2 Coruscant Guard troopers at a checkpoint ahead see them at the same moment. They look at each other. They look at the column. They look at each other again. One of them reaches for his comm. Anakin keeps walking. The guard troopers do not move to intercept. Whether that is training or instinct or the specific paralysis that comes from being 2 men faced with 32 is not something Anakin investigates. He passes them at 3 meters and does not slow down. The temple's main approach is a broad processional avenue of pale stone that rises from the street level in a shallow ramp, flanked by statuary, and the kind of deliberate architectural space that was designed to make anyone walking up it feel the weight of what they are approaching. Anakin has walked this approach hundreds of times. It has never felt like this. Word has moved ahead of them somehow, through the guard's commnet, through the temple's own security system, through whatever invisible current carries information through a place that houses several hundred force-sensitive beings. By the time they reach the top of the processional ramp, there are people watching from every level of the temple's outer terraces. Padawans in training clothes clustered at the balustrade. Knights and masters standing in doorways and at windows. A group of initiates, very young, corralled by a harried-looking senior Padawan who is trying to move them back inside and failing, because children always choose spectacle over instruction. The murmur that runs through the gathered observers is not a single sound, but many sounds. Surprise, recognition, confusion, building in layers as the orange-marked armor registers, as the figure walking at the column's head resolves into someone they know. Anakin does not look at the watching faces. He looks at the doors. Temple security meets them at the main entrance. 4 temple guards in their ceremonial armor and blank masks, weapons drawn, but held in the diagonal position that means present, but not threatening. A careful choice, a calibrated choice. The posture of men who have been told to intercept, and have decided on their own initiative to intercept in a way that leaves room for this to go without violence. Behind the guards, standing in the entrance hall's high-ceilinged space, is a figure that stops Anakin more effectively than the guards could have. Plo Koon. He stands alone, robes still, hands folded. He looks at the column that has just walked up the processional and into the entrance hall, and he looks at Anakin and he looks at Ahsoka, and his expression behind his breath mask does the thing it always does. The thing that communicates, without the usual tools of expression, precisely and completely what he means. He steps aside. Not out of the way, he moves to a position that is parallel to the entrance, not blocking it. A gesture that is not approval and is not resistance, and is something more deliberate than either. He looks at Ahsoka as she passes. "Little Ahsoka," he says quietly. She slows for a moment. Just a moment. "Master Plo," she says. He nods once. She keeps walking. The temple guards do not move to stop them. The walk through the temple interior is different from the approach. Outside, the space was open and the watching faces were at a distance, and the Coruscant sky provided a context that made the column's presence feel, at least, like it existed in a world of ordinary cause and effect. Inside, the temple's corridors narrow the space and amplify it simultaneously. The stone walls and vaulted ceilings collecting the sound of 32 sets of boots until the column sounds larger than it is. And the faces that appear in doorways and at corridor junctions are close enough to make eye contact. A knight Anakin doesn't know by name steps into the corridor 20 meters ahead with her hand on her lightsaber hilt. Her eyes go from Anakin to the troopers to Ahsoka and back to Anakin. "Stand down, knight," Anakin says. He keeps walking. "This is not your situation." She looks at him for a long moment. Her hand does not move from her hilt. Then Anakin passes her, and Rex passes her, and the column passes her, and at some point while it is passing, she takes her hand from her hilt. She doesn't follow. 2 corridors further, a master Anakin knows, Luminara Unduli, Barris's former teacher, steps out of a side passage and sees the column and goes very still. She looks at Ahsoka. Something crosses her face. Not quite knowledge, not quite suspicion, but the particular expression of a person who has been holding something at arm's length and has just felt the arm begin to give. She steps back into the passage. Barriss Offee's quarters are on the temple's 4th residential level, East Wing, a standard Padawan suite with a view of the outer courtyard and a door that is exactly like every other door on the corridor. Anakin stops in front of it. He looks at it for a moment. He is aware of what is on the other side of this moment. Not the door, but what happens after the door. The things that will be set in motion, the conversations and confrontations and reckonings that begin the second this door opens. He is also aware that the alternative to those things is Ahsoka carrying a wrongful accusation for the rest of her life, and that awareness makes every other consideration uncomplicated. He knocks. The pause before the door opens is approximately 4 seconds. Anakin counts them without meaning to, the way the mind counts things when it is very focused. The door opens. Barriss Offee looks at him, then past him at Ahsoka, then at the corridor full of 501st troopers, then back at Ahsoka. She is composed. That is the first thing. She is composed in a way that might, in a different context, read as innocent. Her expression arranges itself into something careful, questioning, concerned. She looks like someone who is processing an unexpected situation. She is also, Anakin notes, fully dressed at mid-morning in her quarters on a day with no scheduled duties. She is also, he notes, standing with her weight slightly forward rather than settled, the posture of someone who was ready before the door opened. "Anakin," she says. "Ahsoka." Her voice carries the warmth she has always deployed with them, genuine in its texture, familiar in its register. "I heard you were. We need to talk," Anakin says. Something moves behind her eyes. The calculation is brief and visible, an assessment of the corridor, the numbers, the data chip she cannot know about but can intuit from the way they are standing, from the way Ahsoka is looking at her. The assessment concludes in approximately 2 seconds. Her hand goes to her robe. 2 lightsabers come out. The blades that ignite are red. Ventress's stolen sabers, in a Jedi's hands, the wrong color in the wrong place, a visual wrongness that is instant and total, that reads in the gut before it registers in the mind. Ahsoka goes still beside Anakin, not afraid. Something else, something that is grief and recognition and the final, irrevocable closing of a door that she had not quite admitted. Until this moment, she was still hoping might stay open. Barriss runs. She goes left, away from the column, toward the corridor junction that leads to the outer courtyard stairs. And she moves with the speed of someone who has been thinking about exits since before the door opened. Anakin is already moving. "Courtyard," he says to Rex. Rex is already on the comms. The courtyard catches the mid-morning light and holds it. It is one of the temple's oldest spaces, a wide rectangle of pale stone bordered by colonnaded walkways on 3 sides, and the sheer face of the central spire on the 4th, open to the Coruscant sky above in a square of blue, that the city's haze softens to something almost gentle. There are meditation benches along the colonnade. A fountain at the center that has been running for longer than most of the Order's living members have been alive. The stone underfoot is worn smooth by 10,000 years of feet moving across it in every direction. Padawans running, masters walking, initiates who haven't learned yet to be quiet. It is empty when Barriss arrives in it. It is not empty 30 seconds later. She comes through the east colonnade at a run and hits the open courtyard stone and makes for the south exit, the passage that leads to the temple's outer residential wing, and from there to the lower platform levels, an exit route that requires knowing the building well enough to have mapped it in advance. She has mapped it in advance. She moves like someone who has been thinking about this moment for longer than the moment itself has existed. Anakin comes through the east colonnade 4 seconds behind her. He does not run. He reaches out with the Force, and the south exit door seals itself. A precise application of telekinesis to the locking mechanism, the same technique as the Judiciary Complex entrance, the same care. Not violent, just closed. Barriss hits it at speed and pulls up short, and in the second it takes her to register that the door will not move, Anakin has crossed half the courtyard at a walk. She turns. The red sabers come up. Ahsoka comes through the west colonnade. She does not have a weapon, no lightsaber, nothing from the ship. Nothing from the guard troopers she passed in the temple corridors. She comes into the courtyard empty-handed, and she stops 10 meters from Barriss and looks at her across the pale stone. The 2 red blades between them cast no shadows in the mid-morning light. They hum at a frequency that the courtyard's stone walls reflect back from every surface, filling the space with a sound that is felt as much as heard. "Barriss," Ahsoka says. Nothing else, just the name. Barriss looks at her. The composure is still there, the surface of it, but it is the composure of something that is holding under pressure by will rather than by nature, and the pressure is visible now in the set of her jaw. In the way her grip on the stolen sabers is slightly too tight. "You shouldn't have come back," Barriss says. Her voice is even. "You should have run. You were gone. It was over." "It wasn't over," Ahsoka says. "It was wrong. It was necessary." The word lands hard and certain, not defensive, declarative. The word of someone who has been having this argument with herself for a long time and arrived at a place she is committed to. Someone had to say it. Someone had to make them listen. "By framing me," Ahsoka says. "By making the cost visible." Barriss's voice doesn't rise. The Order sends children to war and calls it training. It buries them in the dirt on 100 planets and calls it service. I watched my master fall following orders in a war that the Jedi created and perpetuate. I watched. She stops. Starts again, the words finding a different entry point. You know what I watched. You were there. You buried the same men. Ahsoka doesn't answer immediately. She lets the words exist in the space between them, not agreeing, not dismissing, just acknowledging their weight. I was there, she says. And I didn't do this. Barriss moves. She comes forward with both blades in a split offensive, left saber high, right saber tracing a low lateral arc, the form of someone who has trained rigorously and knows how to use two weapons, and is not, despite everything, willing to simply surrender this moment without making them earn it. Anakin's lightsaber ignites, and he catches the high blade. The contact sends a jolt through the stone beneath them. Ahsoka moves simultaneously, right, away from Anakin's line, circling the edge of the engagement with the fluid acrobatic instinct that has always been her particular gift. Reading the geometry of the fight in the same instant it creates itself. Barriss has to track two directions at once now, and she does it. She is good enough to do it, but tracking two directions costs fractions of a second, and fractions of a second accumulate. The exchange is fast. Barriss drives Anakin back 2 steps, with a combination that is technically precise and physically committed. She is not conserving herself, she is spending everything she has, which is the fighting style of someone who understands that this ends one way, and is trying to change the calculus before it does. She gets the low saber past his guard, and scores a graze along his left forearm, not deep, not disabling, but enough that the burn registers in his face and stays there. Ahsoka comes in from the right. She has no weapon, and she does not need one for what she does next. She times the gap between Barriss's offensive commitment and her recovery, the half-second when both sabers have extended and have not yet returned, and she moves into that gap with the acrobatic precision she has been developing since she was 14 years old, and closes on Barriss's right wrist with both hands. The technique is from Rex. She learned it during a training exercise in the Resolute's corridor, watching him demonstrate pressure point disarms on a combat dummy between campaigns, and she has never used it in live engagement until this moment. She applies it perfectly. The right saber leaves Barriss's grip and clatters across the pale stone, spinning twice and going dark. Barriss pivots and brings the left saber around, and Anakin is already there. He catches her wrist with one hand, and with the other takes the saber hilt in a grip that does not hurt her, but does not allow movement, and holds it there. She stops. The remaining red blade dies. The courtyard is not empty anymore. They have gathered without announcement, drawn by the sound of the sabers, by the word moving through the temple the way word always moves through the temple, by some collective force sensitivity that orients beings toward significant moments the way plants orient toward light. Masters in their robes along the colonnade. Padawans at the courtyard entrance behind them. The 501st Troopers Rex routed through the south approach stand in a line at the colonnade's edge. Helmets on, rifles down, witnesses. Mace Windu is there. Yoda beside him leaning on his staff, watching with the weight of someone who has seen more reckonings than this one and understands what they require. Barriss stands in the center of the courtyard with Anakin's hand on her wrist and Ahsoka 3 meters away, and the gathered weight of the Order around her. And something in her that has been held very tightly for a very long time reaches its structural limit. She doesn't collapse. That would be simpler. She stands straight, and she looks at the watching faces, and something moves across her own face that is not quite relief and not quite grief, and is the specific expression of someone who has been carrying a secret that was too heavy to carry and has finally been allowed to set it down. I did it, she says. The courtyard is very still. I built the nano-droid device. I killed Master Letta's contact. I used Ventress's sabers to direct suspicion. Her voice is even and clear and carrying, a deliberate projection into the space around her, because if this is the moment, then it will be the moment completely. I framed Ahsoka Tano. Specifically and deliberately, a breath. She had nothing to do with it. The silence after that has a quality that silence in open spaces sometimes achieves. A fullness. An active quality, as though the air itself is processing what it has just received. I did it, Barriss continues, because the Jedi Order is what I said it was. We are not peacekeepers. We are instruments of a war that serves people we do not question and destroys people we call brothers and sisters. I have watched this order do terrible things in the name of a republic that is already rotting at its center. Her voice doesn't waver. I was wrong in what I did. I was wrong to use Ahsoka. I will carry that. She looks directly at Ahsoka. I will carry that for the rest of my life, and it will not be enough. Ahsoka looks at her. Her face is steady, not cold, not triumphant, not broken. The face of someone who has just heard the thing she needed to hear and is discovering that the hearing of it is both more and less than she expected. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Yoda's staff makes a soft sound against the stone as he shifts his weight. He looks at Mace. Mace looks at the courtyard floor. Then at Barriss. Then at Ahsoka. A long look. A reckoning look. The look of a man who sat in judgment 4 days ago and is sitting in judgment now and finding the second experience instructive about the first. He nods to the temple guards at the colonnade. They come forward. Barriss doesn't resist. She extends her wrists and she looks straight ahead, and she breathes slowly, and the composure she holds in this moment is real rather than performed. The composure of someone who has arrived where they intended to arrive, by a path that destroyed something they cannot repair, but arrived nonetheless. The red sabers lie on the pale stone where they fell. Nobody touches them. Ahsoka stands in the center of the courtyard and watches the temple guards lead Barriss through the north colonnade until the passage swallows them. The fountain runs. The Coruscant sky above the courtyard's open square is the same blue it was when they walked in. Rex appears at her left shoulder. He doesn't say anything. He stands there, which is enough. Anakin stops beside her on the right. The three of them stand in the courtyard with the stone worn smooth by 10,000 years underfoot, and the confession still hanging in the air above them, and the gathered weight of the order watching from every colonnade. Ahsoka exhales. One long breath, released from somewhere deep. Okay, she says quietly, not to either of them specifically. To the courtyard. To the morning. To herself. The fountain runs. The light doesn't change. Tarkin arrives at the temple at midday. He comes with 2 judicial aides and a datapad and the particular bearing of a man who has decided that forward momentum is the only viable response to a situation that has collapsed around him. He crosses the entrance hall with his chin level and his pace measured, and his expression arranged into the professional neutrality of someone who intends to find, in the wreckage of the last 4 days, some remaining piece of legal leverage that justifies his presence here. He finds Anakin in the first corridor. General Skywalker. Tarkin stops. His eyes move to the data chip in Anakin's hand, the chip Ventress provided. The chain of evidence Rex spent the transit back to Coruscant organizing into a format that 3 different legal frameworks would recognize as admissible. Tarkin reads the situation in the same way all intelligent men read situations. Quickly, accurately, and with immediate calculation of what it means for his own position. I assume the evidence is complete, Anakin says. Forensic authentication from the GAR's own laboratory. Chain of custody documentation. Security logs from Ventress's ship, placing her sabers in the temple before the bombing. A force choke signature on the witness that matches Barriss Offee's known technique within the Judicial Department's own margin standards. He holds Tarkin's gaze. There is no remaining legal argument that places Ahsoka Tano at the center of this. There is no remaining legal argument that justifies the shoot-to-kill order you issued. There is no remaining position from which you prosecute anyone in this building for what happened 4 days ago. Tarkin is quiet for a moment. His jaw works once. A small movement, controlled, the only visible acknowledgement that he is absorbing something he does not enjoy absorbing. The matter of the extraction itself is a matter for the Council and the Senate to negotiate, Anakin says. And the Council has already communicated its position to the Chancellor's office this morning. A pause. I'd suggest reading that communication before you decide what your next sentence is. Tarkin looks at him for a long moment. He is not a man who concedes things. He is a man who assesses when a position has become indefensible and withdraws from it with exactly enough grace to preserve forward viability. He performs that assessment now, visibly and without particular hurry, and arrives at his conclusion. "Good day, General," he says. He turns and walks back through the entrance hall. His aides follow. The door closes behind them. Anakin watches it close. He clips the data chip to his belt and walks toward the council chamber. The chamber is arranged differently than it was 4 days ago. 4 days ago it was 12 seats and 12 composed faces, and the institutional weight of 1,000 years pressing down on every word spoken inside it. Now it is the same 12 seats, but 6 of them empty. The masters who are present have positioned themselves closer together. Informally, the rigid circularity of the formation relaxed in a way that changes the room's character entirely. It looks, for the first time in Anakin's experience of it, like a room where people are sitting rather than a room where positions are held. Mace Windu stands when Anakin enters. He does not do it formally. He does it the way a person stands when they are not sure what the right gesture is, and standing seems more honest than sitting. "The charges against Ahsoka Tano are formally withdrawn," Mace says. "The Senate has been notified. The public record will be amended by end of day." He pauses. "Her record within the Order will reflect no wrongdoing. Not an asterisk, not a notation. Nothing," Anakin nods. "The actions of the 501st Legion during the extraction," Mace begins, "are the reason she's alive to be exonerated," Anakin says, not aggressively, just plainly. Mace holds his gaze. "Yes," he says, "they are." The word costs him something, not pride exactly. But the specific weight that acknowledgement carries when the thing being acknowledged is a failure of the institution you lead. He carries it without flinching. No charges will be brought against any member of the 501st. Their service records will reflect the action as an unregistered field operation pending further review, which is a classification that will remain pending indefinitely. From his seat, Yoda watches Anakin with the expression he has always reserved for moments that are larger than they appear on their surface, the look that contains centuries of pattern recognition, that sees a moment as part of a longer arc rather than an isolated event. "Speak to you, I would," Yoda says. "Of what comes next." "So would I," Anakin says. The conversation that follows runs an hour and a half. Anakin will not recount it in detail afterward, not to Rex and not to Ahsoka, because some of what is said in that chamber belongs to the chamber and to the people who said it, and because the parts that matter most are not the ones that would survive the process of being made into a report. What he will say, when asked, is that the Council said what he expected them to say, and that he said what he had already decided to say, and that there was a point in the middle of it when Mace Windu looked at him with something that was not agreement, and was not defeat, and was something more complicated than either, the expression of a man who has been forced to see his own institution clearly, and is deciding in real time what to do with that clarity. What Yoda says at the end of it is something Anakin will carry for a long time, not because it changes what he has decided, but because it is said with the weight of someone who has earned the right to say it, and is saying it anyway, which is a form of honesty that Anakin has always, despite everything, respected in him. "Easy, the right path is not," Yoda says. "Different, the harder path from the wrong one is. Remember that. You must." Anakin looks at him. He looks at the staff, the ancient hands folded over it, the eyes that have been watching the galaxy make its mistakes for 8 centuries. "I know," he says. Yoda nods slowly. "Go," he says. Much still to say. "People waiting. You have." He finds Mace in the outer corridor afterward. Not by accident. Mace is standing precisely where a man stands who has followed someone out of a room, because there is something left to say that couldn't be said inside it. He has his hands clasped behind him, and he is looking at the corridor wall, at the carved stone that has been here since before either of them was born. And he turns when he hears Anakin's footsteps. They look at each other for a moment. "The shoot-to-kill order," Mace says. Not an apology, he is not building toward one, and Anakin doesn't want one. An acknowledgement. "We did not authorize it. I want you to understand that. What Tarkin did moved faster than the Council's awareness of it, and that is something we will be examining in detail." He pauses. "It should not have been possible." "No," Anakin agrees. "It shouldn't. We failed her," Mace says. The words come out with the particular flatness of a man who has made himself say something precisely because it would be easier not to. I failed her. The reasoning I gave you was not wrong, but the conclusion I drew from it was, there is a difference between the Order being above the law and the Order abandoning its own, and I called it the same thing when it wasn't. He holds Anakin's gaze. That distinction cost her 4 days in a cell. I will not pretend otherwise. Anakin is quiet for a moment. Something moves through him that is not quite the anger he has been carrying for 4 days, not its absence exactly, but the anger finding an edge it can actually use rather than a wall it can only press against. She'll remember those 4 days, he says. She should. Yes, Mace says. She should. He unclasps his hands, straightens slightly. What I said in that chamber, about the Order's hands being bound. I meant it. I still mean it. The political reality of this Order's position in the Republic does not disappear because it became inconvenient last week. He looks at Anakin directly. But meaning something and acting on it without examining what it costs, that is where I failed. We cannot claim to stand for something and then hand our own to a process we know is corrupt without calling that what it is. The corridor is very quiet. Somewhere below them the temple is processing the morning, the sounds of a large institution resuming its ordinary functions, the particular hum of several hundred lives moving through their days. Ordinary sounds. The sound of something that continues. There's something else. Mace says. His voice shifts slightly, not softer exactly, but more careful. The voice of a man entering a part of the conversation he has been considering how to approach. What you did, taking the 501st in, the decision you made in that corridor after you left this chamber. He looks at Anakin the way he always looks at him, with the vigilance that has never quite resolved into trust, but has never, in 15 years, resolved into dismissal either. It was not sanctioned. It was not orderly. By any conventional measure, it was exactly the kind of unilateral action that makes this Order's relationship with the Senate more difficult than it already is. I know, Anakin says. And it was also, Mace continues, without inflection, the only thing that kept an innocent girl alive long enough for the truth to find her. A pause. I have been sitting with that for 4 hours. It does not resolve cleanly. No, Anakin says. It doesn't. Mace nods once. He looks at the wall again briefly, then back. She was lucky, he says, that you are who you are. That is not a system. That is not something we can build policy around. Lucky is not good enough. He meets Anakin's eyes. The process failed. We will fix the process. But I need you to understand that what you did was not a substitute for a working process. It was a response to a broken one. And that broken processes cannot be fixed by 1 Jedi and 30 soldiers every time they fail. It is the most honest thing Mace Windu has ever said to him. Anakin knows it as it lands. He holds it without arguing with it. Because it doesn't deserve to be argued with. I understand, he says. Mace looks at him for one more moment. Something in his expression settles. Not satisfaction, not resolution, but the particular stillness of a man who has said what he needed to say and trusts, for the moment, that it has been heard. Go find your Padawan, he says. Plo Koon is waiting in the stairwell. This is not accidental either, and both of them know it, and neither of them comments on it. Plo Koon has always had his own way of being present at the right moment, not through strategy or positioning, but through the particular attentiveness of a master who has spent a very long time paying careful attention to the people he loves. He falls into step beside Anakin on the stairs without preamble. She will need time, Plo Koon says. His voice through the breath mask is what it always is, measured, warm in the way of things that have earned their warmth, rather than performed it. Not from us, from herself. From the question of what she does with what she now knows about what this place is capable of. I know, Anakin says. You will want to have the answer ready for her, Plo Koon says. You will want to tell her what to think about it, because that is what you do with people you love. You try to resolve it for them. Don't. He says it without judgment. Just the weight of someone who has watched Anakin Skywalker love people with a particular intensity that makes everything both better and harder. Let her arrive at her own conclusions. They will be more durable than yours. Anakin is quiet for a moment. And if her conclusions take her somewhere far from here? Plo Koon is quiet too, for long enough that the stairwell holds the silence between them without pressure. Then we will have given her a reason to leave, he says finally, and we will have to live with that. He pauses at the landing, and looks at Anakin with the steady attention he has been directing at him since Anakin was 9 years old, and standing in a temple corridor trying very hard not to show how afraid he was. What matters is that she knows the door exists. That she was not pushed through it. He stops at the landing. He is not going further. This is as far as he intended to come, and Anakin understands that. She is lucky in her master, Plo Koon says simply. He says it the way he says things he means, without decoration, without the softening that would make it easier to dismiss. Whatever comes next. He turns back up the stairs. Anakin watches him go for a moment. Then he turns and keeps walking down. The antechamber is quiet at this hour. The same pale stone walls. The same afternoon light coming through the same windows. The angle shifted from 4 days ago. The Coruscant sun has continued its indifferent circuit, regardless of everything that has happened beneath it. The same bench along the east wall where she sat during the ceremony of her dismissal, where she held herself so carefully together that she was already gone before the last word was read. Ahsoka is sitting on that bench now. Rex is with her, standing at the window with his arms folded and his eyes on the skyline, giving her the kind of quiet company that asks nothing and offers presence as its own sufficient thing. He looks over when Anakin enters, reads his face in the familiar 2 seconds, and looks back at the window without comment. Ahsoka looks up. Anakin sits down across from her. He leans forward with his forearms on his knees, and he looks at her, and she looks back. And what passes between them in that moment has been accumulating since the corridor outside the council chamber 4 days ago. Not built from any single thing but from all of it, the whole shape of the last 4 days laid down between them in the particular language that only exists between people who have been through enough together that words are mostly a courtesy. The charges are dropped, he says. Everything restored. The Senate's been notified. By end of day there's no record that says anything other than the truth. Ahsoka absorbs that. She looks at the wall briefly, not at anything specific, just at the middle distance, the way she looks when something is arriving that is too large to meet head-on and needs to be approached from a slight angle. Then she looks back at him. "And Barriss," she says. "The council has her." He holds her gaze. She'll face the Senate's tribunal. Her own evidence, her own confession, in front of a courtyard full of witnesses. There's nowhere for it to go except where it goes. Ahsoka nods. A small movement, the kind that means she has already thought through everything on the other side of this and has arrived somewhere she can stand. "And the 501st, she says. "Rex. The men. No charges. Service records sealed as unregistered field operation, pending review that will stay pending." He looks at Rex, who has not turned from the window, but whose posture communicates clearly that he is listening. They're clear. Rex's shoulders drop by 0.5 centimeter. Just that. It is the Rex equivalent of a long exhale. Ahsoka looks at her hands in her lap. She turns them over once, palm up, then palm down, the small unconscious gesture of someone taking stock of what they are still holding and what they have been allowed to put down. "The council wants to reinstate me," she says. "It is not a question. Full rank. Everything restored. No conditions." He watches her face. They're offering both of us the same thing. Same terms. She looks up at him. Both of us. Yes, the word sits between them. She looks at him for a long moment. At his face, with the particular attention she has been giving him since they came off the ship, since the courtyard, since the moment in the hold when he told her the decision was his and was done. Reading him the way she has been reading him for 3 years, with the accuracy that comes from studying something very carefully because it matters very much. "What are you going to do?" she asks. He has known the answer to this since the corridor outside the council chamber 4 days ago. Since the turbolift. Since the moment he looked at the lightsaber in his hand and understood that the decision had already been made inside him, and what remained was only the acting on it. He has held it without saying it aloud, because some things need to be said in the right place to the right person, and this is that place, and she is that person. "I'm done," he says. Ahsoka absorbs that. She doesn't look surprised. She looks like someone who already knew and needed to hear it said. Not the order entirely, that is not what he means, and they both understand it. He means the performance of it, the version of himself that has been sitting in council anterooms and receiving orders through chains of command that lead to men like Tarkin, and institutions that hand their own to corrupt processes, and call it political necessity. He means the version of himself that stood in a corridor 4 days ago and understood, with the particular clarity of a thing long known and finally admitted, that he has been operating inside a framework that has been wrong in specific ways for a long time, and that he has been choosing not to name those ways, because naming them required doing something about them. He named them. He did something about them. He is done with the version of himself that wouldn't. "Whatever you decide," he says, "whatever you need, that's the decision. Not this one. Not mine." She is quiet for a long time. Long enough that the light through the window moves slightly. The way light moves when you're paying attention to something else and time keeps going without asking permission. Then she reaches up and touches the side of her montrals, a small, unconscious gesture, the kind that means she is thinking about identity, about what she is and has been and might be going forward, about the braid that is not there anymore and the space where it was, and what that space means now that the reason for its removal has been formally, publicly, irrevocably undone. "No," she says. "Not yet." She looks at him steadily. "Maybe not ever. But not today." He nods. They sit with that for a moment. The bench, the afternoon light, Rex at the window, the fountain somewhere below still running with the indifferent constancy of something that has been running for 10,000 years and will keep running long after all of them are done with their decisions. Then Ahsoka does something she has not done since the antechamber 4 days ago. She smiles. It is small and tired and completely real, the smile of someone who has been through something that earned it, and it lands in the room the way the first light lands after a very long dark, not dramatic, not sudden, just quietly and completely present. "So," she says, "what do we do now?" The lightsaber has been on his belt for 15 years. He is aware of this in a way he has not been aware of it before. Not the weight of it, which has been as familiar as the weight of his own hand for so long that he stopped registering it years ago, but the fact of it, the history of it, the particular accumulation of everything the object has been present for, everything it has passed through alongside him, every decision it has been at his hip for, the good ones and the ones he would not make again, and the ones that existed in the space between those categories where most of the real decisions live. He holds it for a moment in the corridor outside the antechamber. He is alone here. Rex is still with Ahsoka. The corridor is the quiet kind of quiet that temple corridors achieve in the early afternoon, when the morning's events have settled and the evenings have not yet begun. A held breath quality. The particular stillness of stone that has absorbed a great deal and is processing it slowly, the way stone does. He turns the hilt once in his grip. He thinks about Qui-Gon, who put it in his hand the first time. He thinks about Obi-Wan, who taught him what to do with it. He thinks about the 112 men whose names he knows, and the campaigns and the planets, and the specific quality of light on a dozen different worlds where he has held this object and made decisions with it at his hip. He thinks about Ahsoka in the antechamber 4 days ago, chin level, eyes dry, already somewhere else. He thinks about her on the bench just now, the small tired smile. So what do we do now? He clips it back to his belt. Not yet. First, there is the chamber. The council chamber receives him one final time. The 6 masters who remain after the morning's session are positioned as they were when he left. Informally, the rigid circle relaxed, the room more human in its arrangement than it has ever been in his experience of it. Mace is standing at the window. Yoda has not moved. Plo Koon is present again, having returned from wherever the stairwell took him. And he watches Anakin enter with the expression of someone who already knows how this goes, and has made his peace with it. No one speaks when he walks in. He walks to the center of the room. He stands in the place where the holographic display projects when the Council is reviewing tactical maps or receiving field reports, the place he has stood in 100 times to give those reports, to receive those orders, to have those arguments with 12 composed faces arranged in their careful circle around him. He reaches to his belt. The hilt comes free of its clip with the particular small sound it has always made. A sound so familiar he has stopped hearing it except in the moments when it matters. And it matters now. So he hears it. He holds it in both hands for a moment. He looks at it. He is not doing this dramatically. He is simply taking a moment. Because the moment deserves one. Because 15 years is not nothing, and he will not pretend it is nothing by moving through this too fast. Then he crouches and sets it on the floor. The stone receives it without ceremony. It lies there in the center of the room between the 12 seats, blue-hilted. Worn at the grip, the object that has been more continuously present in his life than almost any person or place he can name. It looks, from this angle, exactly like what it is. An old lightsaber on pale stone. Nothing more. Nothing less. He straightens. He does not make a speech. There is no speech that is not smaller than the gesture, and the gesture is already smaller than what it represents. And what it represents is already fully understood by everyone in the room. He has already said everything that needed to be said. He said it in the corridor with Mace, on the stairs with Plo Koon, in the hold of a freighter 6 minutes out of atmosphere, in the council chamber 4 days ago when he asked whether the standard he held was the Order's standard, and heard the answer in the silence that followed. He looks at Yoda. Yoda looks back. His ears are still, which is the Yoda equivalent of a very complicated expression. He holds Anakin's gaze for a long moment with the weight of 800 years behind it, not judging, not grieving exactly, not approving. Something more difficult and more honest than any of those things. The look of someone who sees a thing happening and recognizes it as part of a pattern too large to intervene in and too important to look away from. He gives a single, slow nod. Anakin turns. He walks out of the chamber for the last time and does not look back, because looking back is for people who are uncertain. And he is not uncertain. He is many other things. Tired, marked by the last 4 days in ways he will be sorting through for a long time, carrying Mace's words and Plo Koon's words and Yoda's nod and the weight of 112 names. But he is not uncertain. The doors close behind him. The corridor is the same corridor it has always been. Long, quiet amber light at this time of day, the windows doing what Coruscant windows do with late afternoon sun. The temple guard at the far end has not moved. Anakin walks past him without acknowledgement, not dismissive. The man is doing his job and deserves no interruption, and takes the turbolift down. Rex is exactly where Anakin left him, at the antechamber window, but Ahsoka is standing now rather than sitting, and when Anakin comes through the door she reads his face and reads the absence at his hip simultaneously, and something moves across her expression that is not surprise, and is not grief. And is not quite either of those things, but lives in the same neighborhood. She looks at the empty clip on his belt. She looks at his face. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't ask whether he is sure, because she can see that he is sure, and asking people who are sure whether they are sure is a way of making yourself feel better at their expense, and Ahsoka Tano has never been that person. Rex turns from the window. He looks at the empty clip. He looks at Anakin. The assessment takes 2 seconds, as it always does, and arrives at the correct conclusion, as it always does. Right, Rex says. It is exactly the right word and exactly the right amount of it. They stand for a moment in the antechamber, the 3 of them, the Jedi who is no longer a Jedi, the Padawan who is no longer a Padawan, the captain who has this morning become a wanted man, unwanted again. And between them the particular quality of silence that belongs to people who have been through something together and are standing at the end of it looking at the beginning of whatever comes next. The 501st will need a debrief, Rex says. He says it practically, Because Rex is a practical man, and because someone in this room needs to be thinking about the next 4 hours. Jesse's holding them at the transport. They've been patient. They deserve to know how it sits. "I'll come," Anakin says. Rex nods. He looks at Ahsoka. "Commander?" The title lands in the room. Ahsoka looks at him, at Rex, who has called her that since Christophsis, who called her that in the hold of a freighter 6 minutes out of Coruscant with a shoot-to-kill order cycling on the Garband, who is calling her that now in a temple antechamber with the charges dropped and the record cleared, and the morning's events settling into something that will take a long time to become history. She stands up straight. "I'll come," she says. The processional ramp holds the afternoon light the way it holds everything, without preference, without judgment. The pale stone receiving what the day offers and keeping it for as long as the day lasts. They come down it in no particular formation. Not a column, not a march. 3 people walking down a ramp together in the early afternoon, the way people walk when they are going somewhere and have decided the manner of getting there is their own. The Coruscant skyline does what it always does. The traffic moving in its lanes at fixed altitudes. The light off a million surfaces doing the thing that light off a million surfaces does, in a city that has never in recorded history gone dark. The vendor on the corner is still there. He watches them come down the ramp the same way he watched the column go up it this morning, with the full attention of someone who understands that something is happening that is worth the watching. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. At the bottom of the ramp, on the pale stone where the processional meets the street, Anakin stops. He looks up at the temple. It is a building he has known since he was 9 years old. He has never in all that time been able to see it the way other people see it, as a landmark, as a symbol, as the thing it looks like from the outside. It has always been the place he was inside of, looking out. This is the first time in 15 years that he is standing outside of it and looking at it as a whole thing. A complete thing. A thing with an outside that can be regarded from a distance. It is very large. It is very old. It is in this light, beautiful in the specific way of things that have been built to last, and have lasted. The beauty of continuity and weight, and the particular dignity of something that has survived long enough to have earned its own flaws. He looks at it for a long moment. Then he looks at the street ahead of him. "So," Ahsoka says. She is standing beside him at the bottom of the ramp, looking at the skyline rather than the temple, at the city rather than the institution, at the thing that is forward rather than the thing that is behind. She has her arms loose at her sides, and her montrals high, and the civilian clothes she has been wearing since the detention cell. And she looks, in this light, at this angle, exactly like herself, not the Padawan, not the accused, not the girl in the antechamber with her eyes dry and her chin level and already gone somewhere inside herself. Just Ahsoka, the real one, underneath everything. "So," Anakin agrees. Rex stands on his right. He has his helmet under his arm, and the afternoon light on the orange detailing of his pauldron, and the expression of a man who has made his decision and is organized around it with the completeness that only comes from having made it without reservation. He is looking at the traffic lanes, assessing, the way Rex always assesses everything. Not with anxiety but with the practical attention of someone who considers understanding the terrain to be the basic courtesy you owe any situation you are about to enter. "The 501st is 3 blocks north," Rex says. "We have a transport, a debrief, and after that," he pauses. "After that we have a considerable number of options and a shortage of orders, which is either a problem or not a problem depending on how you look at it." "It's not a problem," Anakin says. "No," Rex agrees. "I didn't think so." Ahsoka looks at the traffic lanes, at the city moving around them, indifferent and continuous, 47 trillion lives burning their energy in every direction at once. She looks at it the way she was looking at the Coruscant cloud ceiling from the extraction point before dawn, with the particular quality of attention that means she is processing something too large for immediate reaction and is giving it the time it needs. Then she looks at Anakin. "We need somewhere to go," she says. Not a question. Not a complaint. A thing that needs to be true and is, in her assessment of it, currently not yet true, but will be. "We'll find somewhere," Anakin says. "And the men," she says. "They followed us into this. Whatever comes after, They knew what they were signing on to, Rex says. Every one of them. I made sure of it. He looks at her directly, the way Rex looks at people when he wants the words to land without ambiguity. They don't need you to carry that. They made their own decision, and they'd make it again. What they need is somewhere useful to be. Ahsoka looks at him for a moment. Then she nods, the small, certain nod of someone who has heard something true and is filing it in the place where true things go. Then we find somewhere useful to be, she says. The 501st is waiting at the transport 3 blocks north, exactly where Rex said they would be. They are doing what the 501st does when it is waiting: the weapons maintenance, the sabak, the low conversations, the 100 small rituals of men who are good at occupying time between significant things without wasting it. Jesse is running a stun-setting calibration on his rifle with the focused attention of someone who considers every moment without a specific task to be a moment that could be used for equipment maintenance. Kix is reviewing his field kit. Tup is sitting on the transport's landing strut with his helmet in his hands, turning it slowly, looking at the orange detailing, Ahsoka's design. The pattern she influenced across 3 campaigns ago, the particular marks that make the 501st recognizable from any angle at any distance. He looks up when he hears them coming. Then Jesse looks up. Then Kix. Then one by one, in the way of a unit that has been together long enough to move like a single organism when it matters, the rest of them. They look at Anakin. They look at the empty clip on his belt. They look at Ahsoka. Nobody says anything for a moment. Then Jesse puts down his rifle. He stands up. He is not standing to attention. It is not that kind of standing. It is the kind of standing that a person does when something arrives that deserves to be met on your feet. Fives stands beside him. Then Kix. Then Tup, still holding his helmet. One by one, without command, without order, without the kind of formal signal that would make this into a ceremony rather than what it is. All 31 of them are on their feet. Dogma, in the back, is the last to stand. He stands very straight. His expression is the expression of a man who has made a great deal of peace with a great many things in the last year, and is now, in this moment, at peace with one more. The silence that follows is not the waiting kind. It is the arrived kind. The kind that means something has concluded and something else is beginning, and the men in this formation understand both of those things without being told. Anakin looks at them. We don't have orders, he says. We don't have a chain of command to report to. We don't have a mission briefing or a target or a timeline. He looks at each face in turn, the way he looked at them in the barracks last night, actually looking, actually seeing, taking the full moment to do it properly. What we have is each other, and a transport, and the specific advantage of being people nobody is currently expecting to show up anywhere. He pauses. In my experience, that's enough. From somewhere in the middle of the formation. Jesse. Where are we going, General? The title sits in the air for a moment. Anakin looks at it, at the word, at what it means and what it no longer means, and what it has always meant, regardless of any formal designation, which is simply this: a man that men follow, because they trust him. Which is the only kind of authority that has ever actually mattered in a war or out of one. Somewhere we choose, he says. Jesse nods once, satisfied, complete, the nod of a man who has gotten the answer he needed. Kix, next to him, says nothing. He just picks up his kit and moves toward the transport ramp. Because Kix has always expressed his positions through action rather than language, and this is the clearest action he knows. One by one they follow. Ahsoka is the last one up the ramp after Rex. She stops at the top of it and turns and looks back at the city, the skyline, the traffic lanes, the light off a million surfaces. The pale shape of the temple, visible between the towers to the south, its spires catching the late afternoon sun. She looks at it for a long time. Not with grief, not with anger, not with the complicated, unresolved feelings that she will be working through for months and possibly years. Just looking. Taking the full measure of it before she turns away. She takes the full measure of it. Then she turns away. The ramp rises behind her with the particular hydraulic sound of something closing, and the transport's engines climb to their working pitch, and Hawk's voice comes over the internal comm with the professional brevity that is his most consistent characteristic. Ready when you are. Anakin is in the cockpit doorway. He looks back at the hold, at the 31 men finding their places, at Rex taking his position with his arms folded and his eyes already forward. At Ahsoka settling against the starboard wall with her knees up and her arms loose, and the expression of someone who has finally, after a very long time, put down something that was too heavy to carry indefinitely. She looks up and meets his eyes. Something passes between them that needs none of the vocabulary they have spent 3 years developing together. Because it predates that vocabulary, it is older than Christophsis and Ryloth and the Citadel, older than the campaigns and the missions and the 100 decisions made in corridors and cockpits and on the floors of cells. It is the thing that was there from the beginning, in the temple training ground, when she was 14 years old and he was 21, and neither of them had any idea what they were getting into. Which is the same thing it has always been. The specific and uncomplicated fact of being on the same side. He turns to the cockpit. Ready, he says. The engines climb. The transport lifts from the platform with the brisk confidence of a ship whose pilot considers lingering in atmosphere to be a personal failing, and the Coruscant skyline tilts and reorganizes itself through the viewport as Hawk takes them up in a long banking arc that puts the city below and the sky above, and the stars, invisible behind the atmosphere's glow, somewhere beyond both. The planet falls away, the traffic lanes thin, the cloud layer passes beneath them in a wash of orange and amber that is the permanent daylight of a world that has never gone dark. Above it, the sky deepens through blue to something more genuine, and then the stars come out one by one the way they always do. Not all at once, but gradually, the way true things usually arrive. Incrementally and then completely. Ahsoka looks up at them through the viewport. She has been looking at this view since she was 14 years old. She has seen it from the observation decks of cruisers and the cockpits of starfighters, and through the transparasteel of a dozen different vessels on 100 different vectors. It has never looked exactly like this. Rex appears at her shoulder, the way he always appears, without announcement, without ceremony, simply there. Coordinates? He asks. She looks at the stars. Not yet, she says. He nods. He doesn't push. He stands beside her and looks at the same stars, and they are quiet together in the way of people who have been through enough that quiet is no longer a problem to be solved, but a thing to be used. And the stars do what stars do, which is burn without regard for what is happening below them, constant and indifferent and, for all of that, still somehow exactly right for this particular moment. The hyperspace corridor appears on the navigation display. Hawk's voice, from the cockpit, not turning around. Corridors live. Standing by. Nobody answers, immediately. The stars hold. Then Anakin, from the cockpit doorway looking at Ahsoka, well? She takes one more moment with the view. One more full breath in the particular quality of silence that belongs to the space between one thing and the next, before the jump, before the streak, before the new coordinates resolve into wherever they are going. She looks at Rex. Rex looks at her. She looks at the stars one more time. Go, she says. The stars streak. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.